the majestic mountain sheep, a notorious creature most recognized by the horns extending out of the side of its head. But what are the purpose of these horns, and how do they differ from animals such as the mule deer? Both horns and antlers evolved over time in helping that species battle over both mates and territory. Larger horns or larger antlers would give that animal an advantage over smaller horn or antlered animals. But that's about where the similarities end. Let's begin by looking at antlers. Antlers only grow on the males of the Cervidae family, which include deer, elk, and moose. There is one exception to that. The caribou, which is also known, if you domesticate a caribou, as a reindeer, antlers actually grow on both the male and female of that species. Now, it's thought that the females developed antlers to help defend scarce food supplies in the northern tundra and northern forests of North America. But besides the caribou, antlers only grow on males. Antlers fall off the animal each year. They begin growing each spring through little bony structures on each side of the skull called pedicles. And they use those antlers during the rut or the mating season. And when that is done in the winter months, the pedicles basically release the antler and it falls off, or that's often called, they shed their antlers. When antlers first start growing in the spring, they're actually covered with velvet. You can actually see in here where the blood vessels would pump blood up to the skin and the small hairs that are growing on that antler. When the antlers are done growing in the fall, the velvet dies and starts to fall off the antler. Many times you'll see species of animals that grow antlers rubbing them on bushes or trees, which helps get the rest of that dead skin and hairs off of there. It also leaves residue or sap, which can darken that antler up a little bit. Then the antlers are used for battling during the rut over the females. And winter time arrives, and the hormones that produce the growth are totally done. The calcium then reduces, which weakens the bond between the antlers and the pedicle on the skull, and off the antlers fall. Then shortly after, the entire process begins again. The antlers start to grow, and they go through that cycle year after year. Horns, on the other hand, are quite different. Horns grow on the Bovidae family of animals, which include cows, goats, sheep, impalas, water buffalo, antelope. And horns, unlike antlers, grow on both the males and the females most of the time. And in instances when they do grow on the females, the horns are much smaller, and usually as a means of defensive action, definitely not like the males would be using them for battling over territory and mates. Horns are permanent. Unlike antlers that fall off each year, horns are growing on that animal for their entire life. With bighorn sheep, they'll actually create these annuli rings where they build up little rings, almost like tree rings, that you can actually age how old the bighorn sheep is, unlike antlers, where you can't just count the number of points to determine age on that. Horns are made of keratin. It's actually a keratin sheath that goes over a bony core. And this bony core grows out of the skull and is on top of that, growing its entire life. Just like your fingernails, this is the oldest part of the horn, and this is kind of the newest part, just like the part that's growing out at the base of your fingertips there. Finally, unlike antlers that are forked coming off that main beam, horns are not. They're one continuous horn that's growing. Now, there is one exception to this, and that's the North American pronghorn. The pronghorn is actually a very unique animal. Not only are its horns forked or pronged, which gives it its name, the pronghorn, but it's the only horned animal where the keratin sheath actually falls off each year. Again, the exception to the rule, just like the caribou was for the animals that grow antlers. It is easy to see how horns and antlers are so very different. Yet they have developed over time for serving the same purpose of displaying dominance for passing on genetic material through mating. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ryan Brock with the Wild Sheep Foundation.